Somewhere in California, someone still knows exactly what happened that night, and they've never said a word. It was the early hours of Saturday, April 12, 1981. A village of 68 people in the mountains of Northern California. A place so small it didn't even have its own government. In Keddie, nobody locked their doors. Nobody needed to. Until that night. What happened inside Cabin 28 would turn this forgotten village into one of the most disturbing enigmas ever recorded on American soil. A mystery that, more than 4 decades later, remains technically unsolved. If this kind of story moves you, real stories, told from the inside, hit like right now, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. Every one of those actions helps this channel keep bringing you files that most people will never hear about. Welcome to Concealed File. At 7 in the morning on April 12, 1981, 14-year-old Sheila Sharp walked the short distance back to the house where she'd grown up. She'd spent the night at a friend's place. The door of Cabin 28, as always, was unlocked. Sheila simply turned the handle. With no idea, she was about to open the door to the worst moment of her life. The first thing her eyes registered was red. Red spread across the body of her older brother, 15-year-old John Sharp, bound, wounded, motionless. Sheila shut the door on instinct and ran, panicked, to the neighbor's house. James and Zanita Siebold sent their son Jamie to the cabin to check. What Jamie found was a scene no teenager should ever have to witness. But amid the horror, there was also an unexpected relief. In the back bedroom, 3 children were alive and completely unharmed. Jamie guided them out through the back door, away from the sight of the living room, where 3 bodies lay lifeless. Glenna Sharp, 36. John Sharp, 15. Dana Gina Wingate, 17. A friend of John's who was just visiting that night. And Tina Sharp, 12, Glenna's youngest daughter, was gone. By around 8 that morning, authorities had taken over the scene. The entire living room was soaked in blood. Deep gashes marked the walls, as if the house itself had been attacked alongside its occupants. Almost immediately, investigators suspected more than one attacker had been there, and that there was a hatred behind it, personal, directed at least at one of the victims. Everything pointed to Glenna. The autopsy would reveal the true scale of the brutality. All 3 victims had their wrists and ankles bound with electrical wire and tape. John had no defensive wounds at all. He'd been beaten and stabbed while already completely immobilized, with no chance to fight back. Gina Wingate showed similar injuries, along with signs of possible manual strangulation. Glenna told a different story. Unlike the teenagers, she fought. The defensive wounds on her arms proved it. But she'd also been gagged with a particular cruelty. Inside her own mouth, investigators found her underwear. Her body was found beside the sofa, naked from the waist down. And over her, someone had laid a yellow blanket. A strange gesture, almost like remorse. In the middle of such savagery, Glenna suffered multiple stab wounds to the chest and neck, but the most shocking injuries were the blows to her head. According to FBI research on criminal behavior, when an attacker harbors personal hatred toward a victim, the face and head absorb the worst of the violence. The cut to her throat, specifically, hinted at something even more disturbing. Maybe she'd said something the attacker couldn't bear to hear. The weapon used against her head matched the stock of a Daisy 880 air rifle. Fragments of broken plastic, consistent with that model, were recovered at the scene. A kitchen knife, likely used for the wounds to the chest and neck, was also found at the scene. Its blade visibly bent. Proof of force far beyond what was necessary. The sheer range of attack methods reinforced the theory of 2 or more killers. And the estimated time for it all to happen, at least 2 hours. This wasn't a crime of impulse. It was slow. Small traces of blood were found in Tina Sharp's bedroom. The girl was gone. An investigation that already seemed impossible to untangle now took on a new, darker dimension. All of it may have simply been the means to an end, the kidnapping of a 12-year-old girl. Before taking the house, the attackers turned off nearly every light and took the phone off the hook. The closest neighbors noticed nothing out of the ordinary. Those farther away reported only distant moaning, sounds that, on their own, raised no alarm. A few claim to have spotted strange vehicles, a green van, a brown Datsun. The search for Tina spread across the region, but no leads surfaced. On April 29, 1981, Sheriff Doug Thomas announced publicly it was unlikely Tina would be found alive. Months turned into years. To understand what happened that night, we need to rewind a little. Glenna Sharp had moved to Keddie the previous fall after a failed attempt to rebuild her life following a painful separation. There, she found an opportunity and a neighbor who would change everything, Martin Smart. Martin was a violent man, with a history of anger control issues and symptoms tied to post-traumatic stress, a consequence of his time serving in the Vietnam War. And he carried an old grudge against John Sharp, known around the community as a troubled teenager. Under hypnosis, the neighbor boy Justin, who was inside the cabin during the attack and claimed to have heard nothing, described two men attacking Glenna. He said John and Gina arrived in the middle of the assault, that Tina had also been taken by the strangers. His description, two men in their early 20s, wearing sunglasses. One blonde, long hair, mustache. The other dark-haired, short hair, clean-shaven. One of the faces he described bore an uncomfortable resemblance to Justin's own stepfather, Martin Smart. In his interview, Martin claimed to have been at the Keddie's back door bar at the time of the massacre. His wife, Marilyn, and his friend John Boubaid backed up his alibi. But Martin did something curious during questioning. He volunteered, unprompted, that he'd seen two suspicious men at the bar that night. And he mentioned he'd lost a hammer, right after remarking, with strange interest, that the news reports pointed to hammer blows as the cause of death. It was as if he wanted to insert himself into the investigation. Marilyn revealed an inconsistency. She said they'd returned to the bar around 11 p.m., but that, minutes later, Martin and John Boubaid left again. She said that when she woke the next morning, she found them by the wood stove, burning something. Marilyn made it clear to investigators that she believed her husband was involved in the crime. And then, inexplicably, everything stopped. By order of Sheriff Doug Thomas himself, both men were removed from the suspect list. Shortly after, they left Keddie. John Boubaid moved to Illinois, where he would die 7 years later. Martin separated from Marilyn the same week as the murders and also settled in Illinois, passing away in 2000. Both took their secrets with them. On April 22, 1984, 3 years after the massacre, a can collector found fragments of a human skull in a wooded area 51 kilometers from Cabin 28. Near the bones lay a blanket, a blue nylon jacket, a pair of jeans, and an empty roll of surgical tape. At first, investigators treated the discovery as an entirely separate case. But then an anonymous call came into the Plumas County Sheriff's Office. The voice on the line suggested the bones might belong to the missing girl from Keddie. In June 1984, a pathologist confirmed it. The skull and jawbone belonged to Tina Sharp. She'd been killed the same night as the rest of her family. But her body had been carried dozens of kilometers before being left behind. And experts concluded the remains had stayed in that exact spot for nearly 4 years, never once moved. The recording of the anonymous call was sent to the FBI. To this day, nothing has ever been said publicly about its contents. For many investigators, the person behind that call is the single most important piece of the entire puzzle. Probably not the killer, but someone who knew, without a doubt. Who was? In 2016, confidential documents tied Martin Smart even more directly to the massacre. At the center of it was a letter. Before moving to Illinois, Martin had left a note for Marilyn. In it, one line stood out. "I paid the price of your life, and now I've bought it with the lives of 4 people, and you tell me we're done. Fine. What else do you want?" That letter sat for years among the confidential files of the original investigators. But there was more. The mental health professional who treated Martin at the time revealed something alarming. Martin had reportedly confessed, in session, to involvement in the deaths of Glenna and Tina, while denying any role in the deaths of John and Gina. It seems Martin believed a confession made to a therapist could never be used against him in court. When asked why he was only coming forward with this decades later, the professional said something even more damning. He'd already reported everything to the authorities back in 1981, and he'd been ignored. That same year, a hammer was found in a lake near Keddie. Analysis showed it matched the description of Martin Smart's hammer. Since Martin had already died in 2000, there was no way to confirm its origin for certain, but the discovery was enough to reopen the case. The sheriff leading the county in 2016, Greg Hagwood, didn't mince words. The location where the hammer was found suggested it had been placed there deliberately. And he went further still, stating that the original police team's work may have been compromised by corruption. That the two special agents brought in back in 1981, in place of the homicide department, may have been corrupt, helping those responsible vanish without a trace. In April 2018, DNA samples were recovered from one of the pieces of tape found in the cabin. The material was compared against one of the suspects. The genetic investigation remains open to this day. In 2004, Cabin 28 was demolished. In the region's collective memory, the place became a symbol of an evil no one has ever fully been able to explain. A $5,000 reward for information leading to an arrest remains active. What's left are the names: Glenna Sharp, John Sharp, Tina Sharp, Gina Wingate, a mother who fought to the very end, a son who never had a chance to fight back, a teenage girl who was just visiting for the night, and a 12-year-old girl whose remains were found 3 years later, 51 kilometers from home. Somewhere out there, someone still knows exactly what happened that night inside Cabin 28. That someone has never been found. That someone has never faced justice. And this file remains open. Leave your answer in the comments. What do you think really happened that night? If this story stayed with you, hit like, subscribe, and turn on the bell, because every week there's a real story waiting to be told. Stories that stayed hidden. Stories that need to be heard. The next one might be exactly the one you never knew you needed to know. File closed. For now, concealed file, where the truth always surfaces.